All right, so today we'll be talking about anticipation guides as a form of a pre-reading activity that you can do with students. Something that's kind of unique about anticipation guides is not only are they useful for pre-reading, but they also provide a follow-up post-reading activity for you to do with your class as well. So starting off with anticipation guides, let's take a look at what they are and what their purpose in the classroom is. So an anticipation guide is, like I said, a pre-reading activity that would be used most commonly for materials that would either have many misconceptions that students may have about the topic, or it might be something that has to do with controversial material, something that students may have differing opinions about. And this is kind of an activity used to get students thinking about different topics and different ideas before you get into them in the actual text. So looking at how they're set up is students are given a list of statements, and these statements are related to the material that the student will be reading or looking at. Anticipation guides are useful for any subject area, so not just in language arts reading classes. As we'll see later on in the video, they are also useful and important to use in math and science and social studies classes. So the students are given these statements related to the reading, and to each statement, students will respond with either agree, disagree, true, false, yes, or no, based on how they currently feel about the topic. And implementing this in the classroom often will go hand in hand with having a discussion on the topic. So students will individually fill out the anticipation guide, and then the teacher in the class can have an open discussion based on the statements and the opinions that were expressed by the students. And it's important that as a teacher leading this discussion that you refrain from giving your opinion on the ideas, because a big important aspect of this activity is allowing students to explore and to express the ideas and the different thoughts that they have before reading on these topics. So looking at the purpose of these, they serve to activate prior knowledge that students have on the topic, and they provide a hypothesis that can be tested while reading. So they let you as the teacher know what beliefs your students are going into this with. They activate the knowledge that students already have on a topic. So it's making connections to them, tying the ideas and the concepts back to things that they may already know. And looking at a few examples, as we've said before, anticipation guides are useful in any subject. They can be a very valuable tool for teachers to use. And they're valuable for students in the way that they are able to do this as a pre-reading activity, and then also as a post-reading or post-lesson activity to help them see the growth that they've made and maybe changes in their own thoughts or opinions on these different topics. So here is an example of a math anticipation guide. This is a grade 7 guide, and we can see in this first section, these statements are all regarding polygons. So students can look at these statements and then decide if this is something that they agree or disagree on based on their prior knowledge of the subject. And a lot of these ideas will play on some misconceptions that students often have in these areas. Down here in the bottom, we have a little bit more of a geometry example, having students look at the circumference and the area of these different geometric shapes. Again, focused on the misconceptions that students may have in these areas. Here we have a science example. We can look at how an anticipation guide can be used in a science class. And just something to note is you see the before reading column as well as the after reading column, which is another important piece to include. So in this one, it's focused on acid rain, which is something that many students have at least some sort of prior knowledge about. And looking at this, some misconceptions that are pretty common surrounding the subject area are noted, and this allows teachers to do sort of like a pre-assessment on what their students know before going into this topic and starting a lesson on acid rain. And then they will be able to have a post-assessment when they complete the after reading or after lesson aspect. So those are some examples of how anticipation guides can be used in different subjects outside of just English language arts classrooms. There are also many ways that this can be included in literature if you're reading a novel or any kind of book with your class. There are so many resources online that you can find of different examples of anticipation guides, and there are also so many templates that you can find to help you in creating your own. It's important to make sure that you are relating everything back to the focus of the subject or the lesson that you're working on, and just noting that this type of pre-reading activity works particularly well with different concepts, with misconceptions, or maybe controversial issues that students would have differing opinions on.